Hello everyone, Jim of Shiloh Kahal. I have become a proponent of sunrise to sunrise day. I initially started with an evening to evening because that's what I was taught when I first became interested in things of Torah and the idea of the need to observe the Shabbat as it was originally, or Sabbath as it was originally intended. And so I started with the evening to evening, but with time and after finding that to be counterintuitive, and then also coming across information that led one to a sunrise to sunrise day, over time I became a proponent and am a proponent of sunrise to sunrise as the intuitive timing for a calendar day. And as I have studied this out, there are some, and investigated this, there are some basic passages that are used as evidence for why there is an observance of evening to evening. One of the first things people speak of is Genesis 1 and the patterns of Genesis 1 as the creation is described. Another one is Leviticus 23 and these Exodus 12. And then there are some others, but those are some of the main ones, some of the main passages that are used to identify and assert an evening to evening. Well, I did a video based upon Genesis 1 and what I was seeing, agreeing with the patterns that others had identified and that I was agreeing with. I did a video concerning Genesis 1, and in response to that, all of that to say, in response to that, after I made the video about those patterns, I got a response to that video where they're basically, after I put the video out, they say Genesis 1 clearly states that there was an evening and then there was morning in a day. Well, it's the passage I had just evaluated, so I'm not really going there. But he also said Leviticus 23 clearly states that the day is Ereb, E-A space E-R-E-B to Ereb, or evening to evening, in defining the most set apart day of the year. So they're speaking of Yom Kippurim, or the Day of Atonement, and the passage dealing with Ereb. And that's what this video is going to be about, because I want to investigate what Ereb to Ereb is. Now, when I read this, I didn't think too much of it. It didn't set me off to study it, although, I'd heard Ereb before, and I hadn't really spent time with that passage dealing with Ereb specifically. I have dealt with that passage. In fact, in response to this whole comment, I made a response that dealt with how I deal with Leviticus 23, dealing with the day 9 observance, which happens to be the Ereb passage, where we are to observe the Shabbat beginning in day 9 at evening. Well, in response to a pretty good sized response to his comment dealing with those things, he then came back and made another comment. And the point, and in that comment, he came up with a note that where he wrote, Ereb is the end point of the day. I'd not heard that before. It is the point when the sun's disk touches the ground, ending the 9th day of the month. It goes on to describe the timing. Now, the end of the 9th day is also the beginning of the 10th day. The 10th day then proceeds until Ereb of the 10th. The sun's disk touches the horizon, ending the 10th and beginning the 11th day. Pretty simple and wonderful that he laid this out for us. This most important day, he obviously desired total clarity for this cessation. Therefore, the 9th day, Ereb, in quotation, is the start of the 10th day until the next Ereb that ends the 10th day and begins the 11th day is the day. So, is the day in caps. And there is no indication that there is any other way to start or end a day outlined in Scripture. Okay. So there appears to be something about Ereb. Maybe the word Ereb or this concept of Ereb. So I wanted to investigate it, and that's what this video is about. Okay, so the passage in question is Leviticus 23, and specifically verses 27 through 32, where we're introducing the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippurim, which is clearly in 23:27 identified to be on the 10th day of the 7th month. We shall observe the Day of Atonement. And on that day, we're to hold a convocation clearly it's on day 10, that we're to hold the convocation. And we shall afflict our souls and offer a firing made by fire. So on day 10, we are to afflict our souls and hold a convocation, which is a gathering, a meeting. And it goes on to describe that we are to do no work on the same day, or it's the Day of Atonement, to make atonement for us before Yahweh our Elohim. And 29, goes on to say anybody who does work on this day shall be cut off from his people. And in 30, any person who does any work on the same day, I will destroy that person from among his people. So he's basically saying, don't do work on this day. The concept is it's a special day. It's a day of atonement. You are to afflict yourself, take it very seriously, and you are to do no work. And if you do, it's very important to me. Don't do it, or I will cut you off and I will destroy you from among your people. Okay, then we move into 31. Again, he's going on to say, there shall be no manner of work. You shall do it. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings. That's in verse 31. Then he introduces Sabbath. After saying there shall be no work, it says to you in verse 32 that it shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest. So far, all we've talked about is day 10 of the 7th month, being the Day of Atonement, where we are to have a convocation and do no work and afflict our beings. And so far, we haven't introduced day 9 or anything about it. All we're going to hear now, starting at 32, is that day 10 shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest. It shall be and you shall afflict your souls. Okay, now here's where the passage takes a different turn, and this is what is being used for some, to many, to assert that Leviticus 23 speaks of and defines a calendar day for us. Because so far we've been talking about day 10 the entire time. But here, in the middle of verse 32, it reads, on day 9 of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. So he introduces the Sabbath up here, beginning of 32, as being a day of, as being rest, and afflicting our being. And then he says that on day 9, at evening, from evening to evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. So that is what has changed for us. And where we're getting Ereb is here when we say on day 9 of the month, at evening. First of all, let's go look at day 9 just very quickly. So here's a calendar, and let me see if I can just lay this out very quickly for you on the calendar. Here is Yom Kippurim, or the Day of Atonement, on day 10. If you can see this over here, day 10. And so all we've been told through verses 27 through 31 is that we are to, on day 10 of the 7th month, we are to acknowledge it, celebrate it. We are to afflict our being, have a convocation, and do no work. So far, it's all been identified on day 10. If you're going sunrise to sunrise, when you get up, then you will be observing this. You're going to have the convocation, you're going to afflict your being, and you're going to do no work all on this day, starting at sunrise. You're going to do it all the way through nighttime, all the way to sunrise over here on the 11th. And that's how, so far, before we get to verse 32, that you would see the instructions of Leviticus 23. If, however, you were going sunset to sunset, then day 10 would have started over here and run to over here. So it would have started at the end of day 9 and ended here and begun day 10. So we'd have had day 9 all day long until some transfer of the day, which is part of the discussion and question we're having today. And then you would have started here and run all the way through evening of the 10th, which would have become 11th for you. But I will also say that if this is day 9 all day long here from, by when you're waking up, it's day 9. Well, when did day 9 start? Day 9 started over here after the running of day 8 here. So at the end of the daylight period of the 8th, when we transfer time, which is the Ereb, I think that's the argument that is being made here, we're going to transfer into the 9th, and we're going to observe the 9th day from here all the way over here, and then in the evening we're going to start observing the 10th day to the evening of the next day, and that's the 11th. Okay. But we're going to get a movement here, because what the passage reads, how it reads, is that on day 9 of the month at evening. Now this is according to the interlinear here. But this evening is the introduction of Ereb, which is this point of this meeting. So because they have taken this on day 9 of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. They're reading into this that we are changing our days. This is defining our days from us. We're going to say Ereb at evening, which means at evening, then from evening to evening. Let's break this word down real quick. So Ereb, what is it? It is really a word associated with the noun Ereb. Ereb is nothing more than evening in most translations. But in some translations, like the NASB, will translate it as evening, twilight, evenings, night, every night, and sunset. KJV says day, evening, tide, night. I don't really go on. We'll see in a second here, but there's another group that, and there are people who will say that this Ereb really is a word denoting darkness, meaning darkness, speaking of darkness, dark time. All of those things are possibilities, but all of them basically mean something similar, and that is we've got a period of time that involves darkness, either twilight darkness, night type darkness, or darkness, sunset. But it either, in any of those definitions, it's all something similar, and the noun is this Ereb. That may also be EREV. There are some folks who are using that, Erev instead of Ereb. And so what is Bay? Bay is nothing more than a preposition. In another video, I broke that down, and Bay it's just a preposition. It could be at, like the interlinear is defining it here or translating it. It could be in the, could be by the, but it's something in relationship to Ereb. It's either in the, at, by the, something like that. But Ereb is really just a prepositional phrase. So Bay is a qualifier for Ereb, in the, at, evening, at. So that's all it is in its basic use here. And let's go look up the word and see how it's being used. First of all, in Strong's, they're showing us 134 occurrences, but they are adding they're adding all of these various occurrences. Like there's some different spellings of Ereb. And there's Ereb, there's Ha-Ereb, there's Ha-Arbaim, which will be a word used in this video here because of other things I have found. And Harbaim means between the Ereb, basically. Well, actually, Harbaim doesn't. Ben Har-Arbaim does. Okay, but if we go over here to the Englishman's concordances, we find Be-Ereb only used 16 times when we don't introduce all these other things. In all of these, first of all, they're using the Hebrew here, then the NAS, then the KJV, and the interlinear. In all of these occurrences, they are just saying in the evening. And none of them have to do with defining a day, just talking about in the evening, at this period of time when we're getting a transfer of light, the sun is going down and we're moving in from, and we're going to go through the twilight periods and into night. Somewhere in there is an evening. And I will also say that it's possible. Well, here, let me just finish this. Everywhere I go, there is, it's being used as at the evening, on the evening. Was there by the evening that I saw? In the evening, primarily, at evening, every evening. Here's an every evening. In the evening. Here's for the night. I don't really know how they got to for the night. But everything, Be-Ereb, is just really about being in the evening. So the word itself doesn't mean anything other than in the evening, just like you would expect it to be. Now, in the comments that he made, and in another passage I'm going to use, not passage, but a teaching, an article and a website where it's one of the folks who are treating Be-Ereb as though there's something special about it. But in this comment, Be-Ereb to Be-Ereb, evening to evening, seems to have special meaning. And when he says that no, Be-Ereb is the end point of the day, it's the point when the sun's disk meets the day, and it's the start. Be-Ereb is the start of the 10th day. I suppose, but the way they're using this is the way they're using it is suggestive that Be-Ereb means something. But let me also say that where they're saying from evening to evening is not Be-Ereb anymore. There's Be-Ereb. We're dealing with Ereb, so we are talking about evening, but we've changed our preposition to me, from, a preposition from. And then add, which is to, Ereb, evening. So it doesn't say Be-Ereb to Be-Ereb. It doesn't say, that's not what it says. It doesn't say it only says Be-Ereb once in this passage, and then it becomes Me-Ereb, add Ereb, from evening to evening. So there's nothing that I see in this scripture, in Leviticus 23:32, that suggests that Be-Ereb is anything other than, meaning to say at evening, and then Me-Ereb is from evening to evening. There's nothing here that makes Be-Ereb seem to be anything special. And I see nothing over here in any of this where we are talking about the transfer of a calendar day. So when they are reading into the transfer of a calendar day into this passage, I don't think so. I think that that would be eisegesis. That would be assuming that this passage is trying to say something it's not. It's just literally saying at evening, and then from evening to evening, we shall celebrate our Sabbath. So I want to take a moment to, since we've introduced Sabbath, I think one of the possible things that we all could be stumbling upon and finding reason to just disagree is because what do we do with the word Sabbath? First of all, this is a lowercase Sabbath in both occasions. many people, when they hear Sabbath, are treating it as a proper noun. In fact, give me a sec. Well, I'll come back to it in a second. They're treating it as a proper noun, and then associating it with the day. For instance, in Judaism, the Sabbath is associated with the evening to evening celebration. Uh, so when you hear the word Sabbath, you're picturing this seventh day observance of the Sabbath. And then the idea is for Christians, they're keeping a Sabbath on the first day of the week, which is Sunday. Um, we're conjuring, maybe folks are conjuring a like a proper noun, as though Sabbath is referencing um, that specific Sabbath. Um, and I will, but I will, but another definition, and I'm headed there in just a second. Another definition, and the definition that I think is appropriate here, is that a Sabbath is just simply a time of rest. It's a period of rest. It does not speak necessarily of and only of the seventh day rest of or anything in particular. Sabbath is nothing more than a period of rest. So all that we're really being told here is that we're going to observe a Sabbath. We're going to cease from our effort, cease from our work, and we're going to begin to rest. And when does it begin? Day 9 of the month at evening, we begin to celebrate our Sabbath. So we're not reading in a word as though it's a proper noun, like a seventh day Sabbath or anything in particular. It just means we're going to cease from work and rest. One other thing that I think might be happening here is that it's possible that people are assuming that and associating Sabbath with both a full day, meaning it has to be a 24-hour period of time, but it doesn't. A Sabbath can be a shorter period of time. You can take a 2-hour Sabbath. Sabbath is just a period of rest. It could be more or less than a day. So far we haven't, until somebody puts a time qualifier on it, we really don't know how long this Sabbath is, that rest period is, unless somebody does put a time qualifier on it. And another thing that I think might be happening is that people assume then a Sabbath must, if it's a day long, first of all, maybe they're assuming that a Sabbath is a day. They read into it and say a Sabbath is a day, 24-hour period of time. And maybe they're associating it with a calendar day, not just a day, not just a 24-hour period of time, or not just a daylight period. Some of the various uses we will use the word day in various uses. Like it could be the period of daylight, it could be any period, 24-hour period, or whatever you're using for your definition of a day period for one unit of day. Or it could be the calendar day, the day that your calendar begins, the calendar day begins and your calendar day ends. Well, I think many people, it may be that people are associating with this need for a Sabbath to be associated with a calendar day, so that when we say that we're going to have a Sabbath, and then when we put the time qualifier on it, that we're now associating it with a calendar day. But all of that to say, none of that is taking place here in this Leviticus 23:32. It's pretty simple. We are to observe a Sabbath, and then we have time qualifiers. We are to have this period of rest, and then we have time qualifiers. It begins on day 9th of the month at evening. That's all it says. Uh, uh, and then that's when it begins, and then it has a length of time qualifier from evening to evening. And then we're going to have this Sabbath. So basically, we're going to start a Sabbath, a period of rest, on day 9 of the month at evening. And then from that time that we started, from that evening to the next evening, which would be the evening of the 10th, we shall celebrate our Sabbath. And that's all it says. That's all it's saying. It's not saying that it needs to be a calendar day. It's not saying that it needs to be a proper noun Sabbath day with a name on it, although you could now, I suppose, because this becomes the Day of Atonement, Sabbath period. And when you begin to reference this particular Sabbath observance as the Day of Atonement or the Yom Kippurim Sabbath observance, maybe it would take on a proper noun type of approach. Let me take a moment just to define and assert that what I'm saying there. So I'm just going to go grab some online dictionaries, and here's Merriam-Webster's. Let's just go quickly look at Merriam-Webster, and let's look up Sabbath. And it pretty much gives us our proper nouns. It's the seventh day of the week, observed from Friday evening to Saturday evening as a day of rest and worship by Jews and some Christians, or Sunday, 1a, that was 1a, this is 1b, Sunday, observed among Christians as a day of rest and worship. But the other definition is a time of rest, which is what I am referring to. That's what I'm saying that the Sabbath of Leviticus 23 is describing. It's a time of rest. Go down to the etymology, and from Hebrew, it comes from Shabbat, which literally means rest. Let's go look at a different dictionary here. Let's go to dictionary.com, see what it says. Okay, so it's a noun, the Sabbath. They give us the seventh day of the week, just like Merriam-Webster did. And then also the first day of the week, just like Merriam-Webster did. Then it says in the third option, any special day of prayer, worship, or rest. Often Sabbath, a day or other period of rest or break from certain forms of activity. And I'm asserting, this is what I'm saying anyway, that Leviticus 23 is doing. It's just telling us that we have a lowercase Sabbath. See how this is uppercase Sabbath, proper nouns? We're referencing something particular, but when we say lowercase, it's just any period of time or break from certain forms of activity. And Leviticus 23 tells us that is, that we're to break from, we're to afflict ourselves, and we are to break from, we're to have rest, no work at all. And so it's defining for us what the Sabbath is to be, and then it also gives us time qualifiers for it in Leviticus 23. Let's go see if we can find one more here. There's one called, I can find it very quickly. And here's the Collins Online Dictionary. And Sabbath gives us, as a proper noun, the Sabbath is the day of the week when members of some religious groups do not work. The Jewish Sabbath is Saturday and Christian Sabbath is Sunday. So proper nouns, capitalized. Here, they're capitalizing it here, and then they give us a couple of different Sabbaths in American English, and I'm not sure why they're doing that. But here they are doing the same thing. In American English, Sabbath means the seventh day of the week, as we've been talking about, or the first day of the week, as we've been talking about. Again, any special day of prayer or rest resembling the Sabbath. And number 4 is a period of rest. So you're seeing that Sabbath can be a proper noun, or Sabbath can just simply be, just describing any special day or time of rest. The last thing I'm going to show is Wikipedia. And the only reason I'm going to show you Wikipedia, there are a couple reasons. First of all, they give you a good write-up of what it is. But you also see that Christianity and Judaism are not the only ones observing some form of a Sabbath. So there could be all kinds of lowercase Sabbaths and uppercase, proper noun type Sabbaths, where everybody is celebrating Sabbaths, a period of rest or a cessation of activity of some kind. But in Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, we go to Shabbat. Let's go to Shabbat, where literally, describes what that would mean to Judaism. When we get into the etymology of it, the word Shabbat derives from the Hebrew word, whatever this Hebrew word would be here. I'm not a Hebrew scholar. Although frequently translated as rest, which is a noun or a verb, another accurate translation is ceasing from work. The notion of active cessation from labor is also regarded. Okay, so the point of this is to just affirm that Sabbath, really at its root, is really just rest or ceasing from work, and a time period, a time of rest, a period of time of rest and cessation from work. Okay, so what I would like to, just to recap where I'm at right now, I've gone through Leviticus 23:27 through 32, and there is nothing in there about a day to day. All and the reference is we do have this Ereb, and then we have a Ereb from evening to evening. But I see nothing special about it other than it's just a time qualifier. At evening and then from evening to evening. Time qualifiers. And this effectively would be a 24-hour period of time, or another use of the word day to denote a 24-hour period of time, but not necessarily a calendar day. But if we go back to, I can find it, this note, there seems to be an assertion that Ereb is the end point of the day. It's the point when the sun's disk touches the ground, ending the 9th day of the month. And that, therefore, the 9th day, Ereb, is the start of the 10th day. So let's go visit and see if I can make heads or tails of what he's saying, maybe of this Ereb, based upon our calendar. So basically what he's saying is that Ereb is the period of time. This would be, let's pretend my line here is the day that he's talking about. We have the sun touching this, touching the horizon here, and that's the Ereb. Okay, so the moment just before, I guess, let's identify the moment just before, and then the moment just after it goes down. I'm going to quit drawing, you get the idea. So in the moments before the sun touches, then, according to following this commenter's, what he's stating here, in the moment before it touches, we're in day 8. But the moment it touches, did we just transfer? Isn't that what he's saying? We are transferring. Ereb, therefore the 9th day, Ereb, is the start of the 10th day. It's the point where the sun touches the ground. It's the end point of the day. So what is he saying is Ereb? Is this moment in time the end of day 8 and the beginning of day 9? In their context, I think so. So that's the definite transfer of time. Now, I'm going to, in a website and an article that I'm going to turn to in a moment here, they then talk about this period of time as the sun touches this and then goes below the sunset, being a period of time, and that may be Ereb or Ereb to them. I don't know. But according to our commenter, the Ereb of that this moment in time is both the end point of the day in advance, the day prior, and the beginning of the next. So let's draw it over here, because here is. Okay, so here's what he's describing. He is saying that so Ereb is the end point of the day. Ereb is the start. Therefore, the 9th day, Ereb, is the start of the 10th day. So we have this. This is what he's saying. This moment in time is the end of day 9 and the beginning of day 10. If you're going to go evening to evening, I'm not arguing with that so much, but let's see if we can. Because what is Ereb? First of all, let's think about the word evening for a moment. In other videos, I have described this. Evening can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. If Ereb, which is nothing more than the word in the evening or at evening, if he's saying Ereb is a moment in time, it's the point where we are transferring. Okay, but in most places, colloquially, evening is a process. It involves. Give me a second here. So here I've pulled up a graphic that might would help us here, because here is I'm not going to be able to draw on there, but here is just an illustration of the day. This is a 24-hour period of time. Here's the sunset on the left, and here's the sun below the horizon, and here's the sun just above the horizon. So really, you would have this period. This would be twilight. This would be nighttime. If you're following this around, then you have morning, and you have all the daylight periods. This represents a 24-hour day and the breakdown of the day between daylight, twilight, nighttime, twilight, daylight. So he's saying that Ereb is this period of time. I wish I could draw it. Let me see. Okay, so I can draw it. He's saying that Ereb, see if I can draw this all the way down. Ereb is this moment in time here where we transfer days. Now he didn't see that in Leviticus 23, but either he's reading into Leviticus 23 what it means, or he's received Ereb. There's some other scripture somewhere that I have not found that defines Ereb for us, or he's got, he's either come up with or somebody has given him this idea that this is Ereb. So he's defining Ereb right here. But most people will think of the evening. The evening could start as early as an hour before the sun goes down. I've heard that. But it's certainly, most people will think of evening being this twilight period. We have the sun touching here. And we start seeing the day, the light of the day begins to wane as the sun is going down here. And we have this period of time where the light wanes even more as it goes below the horizon. And then we have this period of twilight. First we have the civil twilight, then we have the nautical twilight, and then we have the astronomical twilight as it gets darker and darker. And then we have dusk, where we transfer from having any residual light in the sky from the sun that has moved away to having no more light left in the sky. We have dusk and then we have darkness. So all of this, I've heard the period of evening could be this whole process down through here, rather than be the start of the day. But let's stay with his point, because he's saying Ereb is this endpoint of the day and the start of the new day. And I suppose that's true. Here it is. But then if you run, here's where I start having some breakdown in logic, because the concept is, and everywhere I turn, that evening to evening evening begins a day, and then the day runs from evening to evening. So whatever we're defining as evening becomes a day. He's saying that Ereb is the end of this, but also the beginning, I guess. But then the first thing that we have of day 9 is this Ereb period of time. He's saying that the Ereb of day 9 is over here in the evening. Well, first of all, I agree that the Ereb in the evening of day 9, even in the sunrise to sunrise, would begin over here when the sun goes down. That's the Ereb in the evening. But he's saying we have this Ereb here, where this is the end of day 9 and the beginning of day 10 momentarily here. We have no process of evening. But I think in the concept, he's now giving us, first of all, I'm just going to have to say that maybe he's giving us one Ereb. This is the Ereb of day 8. And this is the Ereb of day 9, this period of time that it's touching. In his construct, I believe he's saying Ereb is this period of time, that moment in time. So this would be the end until it touches, it's day 9. And the moment it touches, it becomes day 10. And that's the transfer. So then his Shabbat would begin, because Ereb, even though we've understood evening to be first, and we would normally say evening over here on the day 9 comes first, he's saying that Ereb as a word is not describing this evening process over here that began day 9, but it's a moment in time where the sun's disk touches the earth, and it's the very last thing of a day, and in this case, day 9. So for this commenter, it appears that Ereb is not evening as a process. It is not evening as the first part of the day. Ereb in the evening for this commenter is this, it's the end of. It is the end of the day rather than the beginning of the day. And I guess I suppose you can make some logic if you can come up with Ereb as a legitimate word, and if you can come up with Ereb meaning it's this end point of the day and it's the last thing that happens on day 9. Because what you're trying to do with this word Ereb is move evening, where all the references to at evening, in the evening, where it would be a morning, the beginning of the day, 9 over here, you're moving Ereb in the evening from the first part of a day to the very last part of the day. And I suppose, but he hasn't shown it to me in Leviticus. Leviticus doesn't say that. All it just says is in the evening. It's describing when the Shabbat begins and has nothing to do with a day. It doesn't mention a calendar day. It's only saying on day 9 in the evening do we begin our Shabbat. That's all it's saying. So this concept that Ereb has this specific meaning of the end point of the day. Okay, but where would you find it? Where I don't know. I didn't find it in the when I was over here and we went into Ereb, and I don't see it here. I don't see anything where it's defining it. We go into Ereb. We go back and let's just see how many passages we get when we just do Ereb alone. They're still showing us 18 occurrences, and I don't know why they're doing that. Over here, 134 occurrences over here. I guess. So his point would be that if you can turn Ereb into the end point of the day instead of the Ereb being the beginning of a day and the evening, maybe you could make that work. But then you have to find where you did not eisegete this concept of the end point of the day into Scripture somewhere, versus somebody coming up with this idea to explain away and try to underpin this evening to evening day that they think has been described elsewhere in Scripture that I'm just not finding. So, all right. So in the moment that Ereb, I'm just going to come back to this message. Is Ereb as the end point of the day would work when it says, therefore, the 9th day Ereb is the start of the 10th day. And if he can make this point be the end of the 9th day and the beginning of the 10th day, this could be because this is definitely when the Shabbat begins, at evening. When the sun goes down, we are to be observing Shabbat, whether it's on the 9th day, But I will also say though that on day 9 in the evening, when it says on day 9 at evening, Ereb, we're on day 9 still. So we're beginning the Shabbat. So we're still beginning the Shabbat on day 9. So I guess when I think about this, when we get into this Shabbat, if we're on day 9, once the moment we've crossed this line and we are to begin our Shabbat at Ereb, we're on day 10 again. So we have the same problem that I've shared in other videos, and that is, Ereb must occur in day 9, but the Ereb is also when we are to be observing from day 9 of the month at evening. So we're mentioning day 9 at evening. Okay, I'm not going to keep beating that because really I think no matter what, we still have to get into eisegesis, something where we're going to have to come up with where we've reached Ereb to mean an end point of the day rather than simply at evening. And I haven't seen anything where Ereb can be defined as an end point of the day. And in almost every understanding I've ever seen of this evening to evening, this, once you hit evening, you've entered a new day concept. Okay, so in my quest to see if there was anything special about this word Ereb, if there was anything out there that gives us some special meaning to Ereb rather than just simply in the evening. Nothing more, nothing less than that. What gives us a reason to read into that a specific end point of the day when the sun touches? Something that we can use then to affirm some meaning to erev. So here's another treatise on it. This is erev, and they're using a V instead of a B, but it's the same kind of. And I've already done a video on this reply to the other video, but I do want to just kind of touch base that they are introducing this erev. There's something special about the erev where they are using erev to define for us this ben ha-arbaim. And so erev becomes foundational to understanding ben ha-arbaim. And where do we see ben ha-arbaim? We see that in Exodus, where we get ben, not as, ben is the Hebrew word for son, but it's also a Hebrew, not sure what type of word it is, but it's a word that defines for us, it distinguishes something from another thing. Here's something, and we're going to distinguish ben other. So we have ben, which is distinguished between the arbaim, which is really just the erebaim. This is im is plural, and this is arbaim. This is where we get between, and when we get into Exodus, I believe it's 12:6, where it says between the evenings, or some translations will say between the either between the evenings or between the twilights, or they might say in the evening or at twilight. But this whole ben harbaim is an Exodus 12:6 passage where we are to slay the peace offering between ben ha-arbaim, between the evenings, and I've also heard another entity describe it as between the darknesses. So he's using erev as the foundational point to help us understand this. So we are in erev, we are visiting Leviticus 23, which is one of the passages used to try to assert an evening to evening calendar day. And ben ha-arbaim is another passage. It takes us to Exodus 12, 6 through 18, 19. That grouping of passages that is often used also to help make the case for an evening to evening calendar day. So I would just say, without going into, this is the cbcg.org website. And I'm not necessarily telling you to go there because, they're just, in fact, I think what they're espousing is just incorrect. I mean, especially when they take this, what they're understanding to be, as though it is, it's so clear. It's such a obvious teaching of, that Leviticus 23 is defining for us a day, a calendar day. And it's just not. Their assertions, I just think, are just wrong. And, well, they're just wrong. So I'm not really pushing there, but just give them their credit. I mean, if you wanted to go see what they had to say at cbcg.org, they have this chapter 4, then they obviously have a chapter 5, and they have the chapters 1 through 4. So they're talking about things, but I think there's a lot of, I would not agree. I don't, you all can make your own decisions, but I don't agree with what they're coming up with. But I am trying to find answers for what this erev or erev might be, as though it can create some sort of a definition that allows us to take the evening and what it's referencing in Leviticus 23 from the beginning of day 9 to the end of day 9. And that's what I'm looking for, is just some explanation. How do we get there? Which, by the way, I'm just going to comment here. None of this, all these gymnastics I'm having to do to try to define erev or Ereb, all of these things that become necessary to redefine and add are not there if you go sunrise to sunrise, because the evening of day 9 is right there where it's supposed to be. It's in the middle of day 9. It's not the beginning or at the end of day 9. It's right in the middle of day 9. So the evening from day 9 runs to the evening of day 10, which is the middle of day 10. at the end of all the daylight period of activity of day 10. So the sun is going down. We're still on day 9. We begin our Shabbat, which is just a time of rest, not a calendar day. It's just simply when we begin the day of the Shabbat that is associated with Day of Atonement, and then we carry it through all the daylight hours of day 10 into the evening of day 10. And that's when we're to keep our Shabbat and afflict our being. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that seems pretty simple and clear. It's only when we begin trying to define the calendar day as beginning at evening and ending at evening, and then we've got to rectify Leviticus 23 alongside of that, and Exodus 12 alongside of that. So, they're making their cases here, but I will just tell you that at the end of the day, I'm not gonna make you relive it with me, but they are saying that, and let me find Ba'aru to Ba'aru. Okay, to get this done, I've gone from the website I took his article and just printed it to a PDF document so that I could just highlight and refer to it a little bit. So here's where I just said it. They're making the case that Ba'arev is the key that unlocks the true meaning of Ben Ha-Arbaim. I've highlighted it here. And then he goes on to say that Leviticus 23 defines Be'erev. I don't know where. I guess he's going to say that in its context it's defining Be'erev, but how does it define Be'erev? Be'erev is just evening, in the evening. Okay, so he's saying that Leviticus 23 is going to give us special meaning for Be'erev, which is kind of what I'm after here. What is so special about Be'erev other than just in the evening, just the literal in the evening? Okay, so it is, he goes on to make this comment that it is God's commands for the Day of Atonement that are of particular importance to our understanding of Be'erev. So there is this apparent need to understand Be'erev. We're going to understand Be'erev. Okay, so other than just the standard, evening in the evening, we need to understand it. Let's see what are you saying to us? And then the words at evening in this verse is, there's a lot. I'm passing up a lot of what he was offering about not working, etc. But the words at even, which is what he's pulling from the JPSA, which I have no problem with this particular translation, because it's really just in the 9th day of the month, Ereb, translated as even, from Ereb, from even unto Ereb. Shall you keep your Sabbath? All that works for me. But he goes on to say the words at even in this verse are translated from the Hebrew phrase Be'erev, okay, at sunset. He's affirming it as sunset. Okay, Be'erev, in the evening literally means it could be in the sunset, it could be at sunset, it could reference darkness, etc. But he's saying it is clearly, or he's saying that it's teaching that it's at sunset. And he does acknowledge that we have the preposition be and the noun erev. Okay, the noun erev literally means, he says that the noun erev literally means the entering. Versus, at sunset, he's saying erev is literally the entering. So, in the entering, at the entering, I guess. And its specific meaning depends upon the context in which it's used and the form in which it appears in the text. When used with the preposition be, erev specifically refers to sunset. Okay, all right. What does that mean, though? Because that doesn't mean anything other than something similar to at evening to me so far. But then he goes on to, I guess he offers the Shotgun Bible here, but it's the same thing, at sunset, from sunset to sunset. And he goes on to say, at sunset, or Be'erev, is a short period of time. So unlike my commenter, we've moved from a moment in time when the disk touches the horizon into a short period of time. And they're defining it as it begins when the sun appears to touch the horizon, like my commenter said, but it continues and ends when the sun drops below the horizon. So the total duration of its setting is no more than 3 to 5 minutes, which I don't know, is that how long it takes for the sun to go down? I was thinking it took a little more than 3 to 5 minutes. He's saying that Erev is very specific. I don't see any specificity in Leviticus 23 related to this concept that we have a period of time that begins when the sun touches the horizon and ends when it goes below the horizon, and might be a period of time that could range from 3 to 5 minutes or even longer. And that this whole period of time is Erev, I guess, but isn't that just simply the evening period of time? We have this, we entered the twilight, and, where he's trying to get this period of time between the sun going down, touching the horizon, and then going below the horizon being Ba'arev, versus all of this being Ba'arev. I guess that's how he's defining it. I'm saying it's very specific. Just to get you a word picture, it looks like this. Here's the Be'erev begins, touching the ground, touching the horizon, I should say, and Ba'arev ends here when it goes below the horizon. So here we have another definition of Be'erev that is a period of time versus just the point in time. This is Be'erev, or Be'ereb, according to my commenter, would be this moment in time, which I come closer to embracing than I could this process of time where it's going down. Because to be the transfer of a calendar day, and maybe that's not what this guy is saying, that the entire Be'erev is the transfer of the calendar day, but he will say emphatically here that give me just a second. So he says emphatically that each day begins and ends at sunset, and that it's clearly established in 23, which I just think that I don't know how he could possibly say that. It hasn't done that. Each day begins and ends at sunset. No, each Shabbat, each period of rest begins and ends at sunset, at Be'ereb, whatever you want to use for that definition. When we're getting to this period of time, we're to be celebrating our Shabbat. Somewhere around here, I'm going to say most of us are associating it around the sun going down, whether you want to do it when it touches or do it when it goes down. And we enter twilight. By the time we're in twilight, we all kind of know we are in the Shabbat by that period of time. But he's saying it clearly establishes it, and that Ba'arev marks the end of the 9th day and the beginning of the 10th day. Okay, but now we've got a process. Ba'arev is this process down here. It's not even, I could go along with my commenter better, where Ba'arev would be a momentary change between the 9th day and the 10th day, but not a 3 to 5 minute or longer period of time. We're getting into our 24 hour day time frame. And so I'm not sure how you could do that. What day does that, for that 3 to 5 minutes, what day does that belong to? I don't know. They're saying it is clear. This is where I would really, they're Be'erev, and trying to assert special meaning to Be'erev, having to account for Be'erev and defining it as some special something that changes a day and causes. I don't see how either one of them are getting the job done here. But when they say that the 10th day of the 7th month is from sunset, or from sunset of the 9th day until sunset, or ad erev of the 10th day, and there's no room for interpretation of Leviticus 23, that the beginning and ending of the Day of Atonement is firmly established by the scriptural record of God's command. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. I'm sorry, the Shabbat is. The beginning and ending of the Shabbat associated with Day of Atonement is established in the scriptural record, but not the beginning and end of the Day of Atonement. Now let me retract what I just said, because the Day of Atonement is, the beginning and ending of the Day of Atonement is firmly established in the scriptural record, and that being day 10. So whenever day 10 begins, so begins the Day of Atonement. And if that day 10 does begin, as they're asserting, at Erev, at sunset, okay, then the Day of Atonement would begin. But that's not what Leviticus 23 is saying. Leviticus 23 is saying that we begin a Shabbat we begin the Day of Atonement on day 10, but that we begin a Shabbat, Ereb, on day 9. That's all it says. So the beginning and the end of Day of Atonement is established in the scriptural record of command is just, I think, erroneous. So I'm not finding any so far, and nowhere else that I look do I find any help with Ereb, where other than them asserting a meaning to Ereb, other than the obvious meaning of just Ereb, evening, darkness, sunset, whatever you want to say, and in the or at, prepositional phrase, in the evening, at dark, at sunset, whatever you want to say, that's what that word means. To insert any other meaning associated with it, that it begins and ends a day, that it's a period of time, is not spoken of in Leviticus 23. It would be extra scriptural. It would be eisegesis, from what I could tell now. If there's scripture somewhere telling us what Erev is, I'm open for it. I want to hear. I want to see if there is more explanation for this. And I just haven't seen it anywhere. So. All right, well, okay, just to see if I can sum it all up. I contend that, let me go to this daylight. I contend that a day begins when the sun comes up over here. As soon as it breaks the horizon, I think we have entered a new day. This would define the calendar day. So on day 9, this would be the beginning of day 9. And then we would have the daylight period of time all day long through day 9. If you can follow what I'm saying, I'm going along here. All day long through day 9. And then we approach, the sun begins to wane as it moves away and it's ready to meet the horizon again. And we come down and we get this period of time. Well, I think that evening could literally be, it has the potential to be this moment in time when the sunset would go down. Maybe that's exactly what evening is, but it could be where the sun touches the ground. It could be when it goes down below. It could be this process here. It could be, colloquially, we'll see evening defined as before, the sun goes down, evening, and then it actually extends into this twilight period of time. We have civil twilight, nautical twilight, and astronomical twilight. So generally speaking, we think of the evening really from this realm all the way down to about here is what we think of as the evening. But it could be this literal moment in time, but it doesn't really matter. This is halfway through, this entire period is halfway through day 9. And this is when we are commanded to begin our Shabbat, our Sabbath. So we're right in the middle of day 9. We're not at the beginning of day 9 or at the end of day 9. We would be right in the middle, according to my understanding, of sunset to sunset. So we're right in the middle. And then once we go through the evening, well, it becomes bedtime somewhere down here, and we go to bed. And then when we get up again and we start the sunrise here, when the sunrise comes up, well, we're starting day 10. But we are still in the middle of the Shabbat, because the Shabbat is going to run from this period of time. And if we were to say when the sun goes down, this is the defining moment of our Shabbat. But whatever you think is the appropriate evening, you need to begin keeping your Shabbat here. This is when our Shabbat begins. And our Shabbat is to run from this evening all the way around to potentially that evening, but I don't think so, because if it's going to be defined as between the sunlights or between the twilights, between the darknesses maybe, but that's not the context of Leviticus 23. I don't know how you could get that, because we need to follow this Shabbat all the way around till it comes back to here. So we begin keeping our Shabbat at twilight in the middle of the day 9. We go to sleep, and then when we wake up, and day 10 begins on sunset, but we're still in the Shabbat. And during this entire daylight period of time, we are in our Shabbat, our period of rest, where we are to be afflicting our souls. We begin afflicting our souls in day 9 in the evening. Here we afflict our soul through any waking hour we have at nighttime. And whatever time we get up in the morning, in the twilights and in the morning, so we are to afflict our soul when we get up. And we continue afflicting our soul and Shabbating, resting throughout the entire daylight period of the day 10. That's what I say is happening. And on the calendar, it will look like this. The day begins here at the beginning of day 9. And in the middle of day 9, when evening begins, we begin our Shabbat, and we carry our Shabbat through the evening, through night, our sleeping time. And then we wake up in the morning on day 10, and we begin day 10, and we continue our Shabbat all the way down to the evening. So that is a sunrise to sunrise explanation. And that stands in contrast then to, let me see if I can erase all of this real quick. That stands in contrast to their understanding, where they're trying to say that the day, not only does Erev start our Sabbath, but it also is defining our day. So our day is either going to start when it touches here, according to my commenter, or according to some, once it goes down, or according to these folks, it would be this period of time when it's going down, this 3 to 5 minute period of time. But not only does this begin our Shabbat at sunset, it begins our day. And nowhere in Leviticus do I see it saying it begins our calendar day, but that's what they're reading into it. Again, maybe because of how they're reading into what a Sabbath must mean to them. When really Sabbath is just a period of time of rest that needs a time qualifier, which happens to be in Leviticus 23. At evening is the beginning, and then from evening to evening is the length of time. But they're saying that the sunset, this Erev, this will be terrible. Ereb or Erev marks not only the beginning of our Sabbath, but also the beginning of our day. So our day begins here, and we keep our Shabbat. The first thing that we experience is twilight. That'd be the first thing we experience on day 10. This would be day 9, the end of day 9. Day 9 all day long during the daylight period. But then we hit this period of time right here, and we've transferred days, and now we're in day 10. No matter how we cook it up, by the time the sun is down in either of those explanations, we would be in day 10. And so the first thing of day 10 is this twilight period of time. And then we get into dusk, and then we have nighttime. So the first thing we do is sleep on pretty much sleep. I shouldn't say that. I don't know about that. But we have our nighttime period. Then we wake up, and we're still in day 10 according to them. And we'll be in day 10 because we're only halfway through day 10 when the sun comes up. And we continue then not only on our calendar day, but on our Shabbat. So our Shabbat and our calendar day are running equal. Starting here at twilight, running around. We're being halfway through sunset, and then coming around to the end of day 10 at sunset. And to make this work, because typically evening to evening, we all understand that evening begins when we get into this period of time and involves twilight. So Ba'arev, and a definition of Ba'arev being either this period of time or this period of time. They're saying that this touching and even the sun going down in the second explanation in the commenters of CBCG, whatever it is, all of this must belong to day 9. All of this must belong to day 9. All of this must belong, I guess. But to get that done, they have to restart defining Ereb as though it has specific meaning and does some things to help us further define what we're talking about here. That is just not part of Leviticus 23 or Exodus 12. So they're having to read into this word Be'erev, into this prepositional phrase Be'erev, meaning that I can't find anywhere. And if somebody has, you've got it in scripture, or you've got other information about how somebody's justifying Be'erev to be the end of the day 9, and how it all must mean that it's affirming unequivocally that we've also started a calendar day here. I'd be interested in that. So, and let me take opportunity here as I close out the video to just say, wow, fine, let's have a discussion about, what this Leviticus 23 and even Exodus 12 passages are about. Let's have a discussion about Ereb, and whether or not it's a calendar. Let's have the discussions. But here's what I emphatically reject, and I've heard it a number of times by a number of people that they keep asserting that scriptures are plain as day. Anybody who says that 23 emphatically asserts a calendar day, I just can't, I reject that notion. Same with Exodus 12. When I hear somebody say and emphatically assert that the scriptures have taught us that, what the calendar day is to be, evening to evening or sunrise to sunrise, there, I cannot receive that out of 23. That's not what we see. Leviticus 23, we do not get clear teaching. We have to read in to get to a sunset to sunset. And we have to presume a sunrise to take my position. Either one is not emphatically clear. Same with Exodus 12. So when I will, while I'm happy to embrace the conversations, I will reject the idea, and quite frankly, when somebody says it, it causes me to question them and their approaches. When they just say it's so clear, Leviticus tells us what the day is, and then they use Leviticus 23 to become the foundation of what they're going to interpret elsewhere, like Exodus 12 or something of that nature. So they're using, they build a case for Leviticus, don't really make the case, but they make this built case that it emphatically defines the day to then take it elsewhere in scripture. And I just don't, I reject that whole approach to it. To have the discussion that Leviticus 23 opens up the door to potentials, maybe. Same with Exodus 12. Further discussion of what Ereb is makes me want to go looking for other additional helps to define it, which I have not found in the scripture of 66, and I so far have not found in any of the extra writings that I have gone through, which are quite a bit of them now. I did not find it in the Dead Sea Scrolls. If I was going to say I found anything in Dead Sea Scroll that affirms a sunrise to sunrise, because it's affirming Enoch's calendar and the Zadokian calendar, but nothing, absolute nothing unequivocal about the definition of the day. So, all right. With that, thank you for spending time with me, and be Baruch.